Hi, welcome back. So in Deuteronomy in Deuteronomy 30 to 31, the first thing that just jumped out the pages was Moses already knew that the Israelites were not going to obey. We saw that at the end of chapter 29, when, after the blessing, he says, but you Israelites, he knew. He already knew. And he starts by telling them that it shall, and how we know this is because he started by telling them, it shall come to pass when all these things come upon you. And then the list of the blessings of them returning to God. Now, I don't know what it's like, but if I was an Israelite really listening intently, to this speech and hearing all these things, it's like, guy, hang on, are you trying to say it will already happen? And then how about, trying? But I remember that, we can do things in our own best efforts as human beings, try to do, try to always course correct or, behavioral modification. But at the end of the day, it's the grace of God that keeps us. That's all I can really say. The grace of God provided them with restoration. If they wholeheartedly return to God, he promised to have compassion on them and bring them back from captivity. In 36, God promised to circumcise their hearts and those of their descendants so that they will become a people known not for their sins and rebellion, but as those who love their God wholeheartedly. Now, the commands that God gave them weren't inaccessible. They were within their reach, in their mouths and in their hearts, just there for them to obey. But I guess even as we know as human beings, sometimes obedience is hard, clearly as demonstrated by them. Moses sets the summary of his speech to them as, I have set before you blessings and curses, life and death, good and evil. And then he urges them to choose life so that they may live and experience God's promises. They may live long and prosper as a nation. Moses was 120 years old when all of this was happening. And he wasn't going into the land with them, but he assured them that God will go before them to destroy the nations and that Joshua would also go ahead. He urged them to be strong and courageous, unafraid and trusting God that he would be with them always. He wrote down the laws and entrusted it to the Levites, commanding them to read it every 7 years. Remember what we said about the 7 years? Every Jubilee year, yes. During the Feast of Tabernacles, when all gather before the Lord as a reminder, and also to teach those who haven't known it, so that they may know and fear the Lord. Now, this was sad because it was very obvious that this was Moses' sort of last hurrah, and he was attesting to the fact that generations will come after them who do not know him or know the law. So he was encouraging them to teach the children that come afterwards. God commands Moses to inaugurate Joshua, and during this he reveals to him that he knew about the Israelites, that he knew that they will not obey, that they will turn away from God and experience the curses. God said this during the inauguration, if you remember, towards the end of the beginning of chapter 31. God commands Moses to write a song and teach it to the Israelites so that it would witness against them when they do rebel. So now this is another thing. I've said this over and over, but this sort of cemented it for me. At this point, God already knew as they were about to enter the promised land what was going to happen. Of course, we know he's the omniscient God, but that didn't stop him from doing everything that he could. It didn't stop him from telling Moses to write, because you know how it is, songs, you remember the melodies as opposed to just, the words. And he knew, but he was still going ahead because he is true to his promise. And that brings me to, the things that I learned about God in this chapter. He knew that they would turn against him, and he still went ahead with his plans for them regardless. This shows that that God's heart towards his people is profound. It is steadfast. It is unchanging. It is constant. His love is great, so great. He knows we are not worth it, right? But he never changes his mind about us. So just knowing that, I personalize this, just knowing that I will be who, I am, or the journey that brought me to where I am right now. God knew about it, but he didn't discard me. And obviously he knows my end, and he knows the mistakes that I will still make, but he still loves me, and he still keeps his promises to me. How does that make you feel? Also my bet. All right then, thank you for joining me today. Tomorrow I'll be sharing the lessons from the next set of chapters that I'll be reading, which are chapters 32 to 34, and then also Psalm 91. Psalm 91 is a very popular psalm, but because remember I said we're doing things chronologically, that was a psalm that arose from reading these chapters, and I'll be sharing the lessons that I learned from them tomorrow, and I hope to see you here. Thank you, and have a good day. Bye.